Okay. Can everyone hear me just fine? I mean, apparently my camera's going to go ahead and just keep the audio going, so I guess you can hear me, right? Let me know if you can. I don't know what the 5 is. I don't know what stop the 5 is. Just so you know, I see that in there. Let us see here. All right. What's going on? I don't know what's going on. Don't know what they're talking about. That's the 5. Mr. Monocle, no idea what you're talking about on that front. Don't know, unfortunately, at all. So sorry about the 5, whatever that is. How's everybody doing? I hope you're doing well. I'm doing pretty well. Apologies still for the sound in here. I ordered some foam. It is good, but there wasn't enough of it, so I still have to put a whole bunch up there. Let's see here. I am also, just so you are, let's see here. Is this actually going to be my last live? Of 2020, likely. So I kind of used the lives for the ability to be able to still be active on here while I'm moving, because I still want to be able to be interacting and talking with you and getting content out and so on and so forth, while not having to dedicate it takes a long time to edit the videos largely. So I went ahead and did just lives in the meantime. However, now that I'm kind of more moved and more settled, I hope to be able to just go back to 2 videos a week, which is what I like to do. And then I'm also going to keep doing some lives both here and on Patreon to be able to keep activity pretty high. So that's where I'm at with that. Let's see here. I think today we're going to still just do some question and answers as per usual. I'm working on the Amanda Knox case at this moment. I went through and I've already put in just dozens of hours of research into this case, and more stuff just keeps coming up. And as I'm seeing all of these different evidences that are being portrayed and so on and so forth, including in the actual original court documents, that was difficult to kind of maneuver in that they were all in Italian. So just going through that, seeing everything that's a part of that, I'm going to stick to just the nonverbal read that I can on Amanda to see if there's any tells of deceit, while having all of this just large amount of information that I have on the case itself as far as the evidences go. So let's see here. Looks like I see my mom in the chats from Montana. Hello, Mom. I hope you're doing well. And let's see here. Mr. Monocle, still don't know what the 5 is. So sorry. I'm going to go ahead and dive into some of the questions. Question from, let's scroll down to the bottom here. I have it from Lisbeth PCB. Would you consider Jeffrey McDonald as a subject? Not sure. Haven't heard of Jeffrey. I'm sorry about that, but maybe if it's requested enough. Let's see here. A lot of people saying hi to Mom there. That's very cute. What did I munch on today? I haven't had a lot of food today. I had some mac and cheese with all natural cheese, which is just way more delicious than the boxed stuff. And I had coffee and crescent rolls. That was about it. That's all that I had. So not too much today. Let's see down here. It keeps moving. So just so you know, I'm going to go ahead and say this as stuff rolls in. If you're new here and you haven't been a part of any of the live streams yet, I try to answer all the questions that I can, but they move pretty fast. So sometimes I have trouble just keeping up with them. So if I don't answer your question right away, try to ask it again, and eventually I'll hopefully be able to get to it. Or if you see a question that somebody else asked and you want to know the answer to it, you ask that question as well. Eventually I'll get around to answering the question. Hope that makes sense. Let's see here. From Mr. Monocle, have you worked for forensics, any type of government field, or no? Not directly involved in forensics. They try to keep that to the people that are on the forensic teams themselves. I've helped consult on certain areas, but I don't talk about the cases often because they're cases that I'd rather not talk about, or I'm not allowed to. So just don't talk about them much. Hope that answers that question real quick here. Can being a verbal analyst be a real job, something in government? Or I'm assuming you mean nonverbal analyst, real job or something in police work. Yes, but it usually is in a consulting style of situation, and it's not as common as you would hope. A lot of the nonverbal stuff will end up going into business situations far more often than police situations, largely because a police interrogation will utilize a polygraph if they can, rather than a nonverbal analyst, just because everybody knows what a polygraph is and it's very intimidating and blah, 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 blah. So it does happen on occasion, just not as much as I would like or as much as you would hope to see. Let us see. Continuing on down. Good question, by the way. Okay. I really have wanted a live stream because I wanted to know if you've been playing Among Us or not. This is from Chloe Mason. The knowledge of baselines and observation makes it super fun. I have not been playing Among Us at all. No, I haven't actually really been playing any video games. I'm almost always just studying for the next video or looking into just doing more research on my own for some of the nonverbal stuff that I have. I stay very busy, so not a lot of video games. But it is on my radar. I have heard that it's a pretty good game, and I've seen a little bit of it played, but just haven't been able to play it myself. Good question, though. Cassie, thank you so much for the donation. I really appreciate that. And Haya, back at you. Let us see here. How can you tell the difference between guilty nerves and anxiety and anxiety disorder? It's usually based off of the context of everything else. Baselines and where a person normally acts is going to be a large deciphering factor between guilty nerves and anxiety and so on and so forth. But that is a great question because it can be difficult to tell the difference between the two. Oftentimes what I'll run into in a nonverbal read is that I'll know that some form of mental processing is happening, but I won't be able to tell what exactly that is because it's still a thought. I'm not a mind reader. I just can interpret body language pretty well. So it'll get to a point to where it's like they're doing something that's showing that they're feeling a certain way. Why they're feeling that certain way is another question. And hopefully that question can be answered as you collect more and more and more data. So say, for instance, I'm dealing with somebody who has just like social anxiety, for instance. If they're in an interview and they have social anxiety, then they'll show a lot of anxiety tells. But the reason that that's different from somebody who might have nerves about it is that in social anxiety, they will show that sort of nervousness continuously across everything. The whole thing is very stressful for them. They're not comfortable with any of it because they have social anxiety. So being able to see that becomes part of their baseline and part of my understanding of their read. And I still have to tailor their positive and negative spikes off of that baseline. For somebody who's just feeling nervous about certain questioning, that's the point of these more basic laid back questions like, what's your name? What's your favorite color? How do you spell your name? Basic things like that there's no weight behind. That's really helping establish what they're going to act as more regularly. And this is still obviously a limited thing because it's still nerve-wracking. Anytime you're in any sort of questioning like that, you're still going to be nervous regardless. It's just nerve-wracking. So you just have to really try to establish that baseline first. And if you can establish that baseline, it makes the rest of the read far, far easier. So with social anxiety like that, that's part of their baseline. With nerves over a certain thing, it rarely has that same consistency that you would see in a social anxiety kind of situation. I hope that makes sense. All right, from SweetPsych. Hi, Logan, child psychologist here. Love your channel. Do nonverbal signals / reads differ between adults and children? If so, how? Well, hi there. It's nice to have you here. And yes and no. Universal, okay, I'll kind of talk a little bit about nonverbal communication. There are learned tells in nonverbal communication, there are cultural tells, and then there are universal tells. And this universal tell is ingrained in us. We don't need to see it happen for it to happen in ourselves. We don't have to learn anything about it. For instance, if somebody is happy, they will smile in some form, regardless on if they've seen it done or not. And this happens with people like, for instance, that have vision impairment as well, who they can't see the face of a person to learn that they need to smile when they're happy, but it still happens. That would be an example of a universal tell. And this is across cultures as well. Research has been done by many different scientists and researchers across the globe of being able to go into remote areas to see, will these like tribes people who never have been exposed to anything of the Western world or modern civilization, they're very remote and secluded, will they still do these same tells? The answer is yes, on the universal side of things. Now there's the learned tells and the cultural tells as well. Those often go hand in hand, and those develop over time. So when a child is born, they're going to do the universal tells. You're born with it. That just happens. But as you get older in the culture that you're in, then more of these specific tells will come out. And you can also train yourself to have certain tells as well. So for instance, over here, there are hand gestures that mean some very, very mean things that they wouldn't mean that somewhere else, and vice versa, and so on and so forth. That would be a cultural tell that's learned. Now, a child wouldn't know that right off the bat. A child isn't born knowing those things, they develop. So I'd say the biggest difference between an adult and a child in their nonverbal communication is the lack of the cultural or learned tells in a kid's nonverbal communication repertoire, so to speak. So that would be my biggest thing. As you see an adult get older and learn more and develop more, then you'll see more of those cultural or learned tells come out. Hope that makes sense. I got a super chat here from Tina Lemus, I'm assuming. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. And finally made it to one of your live streams. Thank you for all your hard work. Well, thank you. I'm glad that you finally made it. I swear, I am having the hardest time figuring out what time is a good time to do a live stream for everybody, because I have people from, the opposite side of the globe from me trying to watch this, and for them it is not a great time. Whereas like for me, it's 6 in the evening, which is after work for my area, and it's far enough after work in some regions to be able to be okay for some people in the US, but on the other side of the globe, I have no idea. So I'm trying my best. If you're really frustrated with my timing on these, I understand. I just don't know what to do about it. I have no idea what to do about it. So if you have some sort of solution for that, that would be great. And I'm sure me and a lot of other live streamers would really appreciate it. But I'm glad that you were able to make it, Tina. Thank you. Let's scroll on down and keep answering some questions. From Taylor Grant. Now is a great time. It's almost 12 p.m. in Australia. Hey, okay, so in Australia, it's a good lunchtime. See, I was planning that. I wasn't planning. From Miss Fish, how many tattoos do I have? Let's see here. Depends. So I have a half sleeve here. I have a tattoo here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think I have 6. Yeah, good question. Thank you. Let's see here. Ooh, from SweetPsych again. Thanks for the answer. You have been oh so awesome, as you always are. Hey, I get what you did there, and thank you for the donation. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that it was hopefully a little bit of help. Let's see here. Why do you have a watch tattoo? It looks like a watch tattoo. This is not a watch, so it's actually supposed to be, I don't know if you can see it real clear. This is a film canister is what it was supposed to look like. Everybody says it looks like a battery because it does. It looks like a big D-cell battery, but it's not. It's supposed to be a film canister, and there's a strip of film across, and it has some important things in my life. Like I've got Montana in the summer or warm months, and Montana in the winter or cold months. I've got a cup of tea or coffee because that's important to me too. I have my wedding date, and I have YouTube here as well because that's been a huge part of my life as well. So that's the reason behind the tattoo that you're seeing there. That looks a lot like a clock or a watch or a battery instead of a film canister like I wanted it to. But great question. Let's see here. From Cordial. How do you pronounce that? I think it's Cordial, right? Cordial? From Cordial Man. Do you think it's important for a body language analyst to be present in solving court cases. Example, reviewing the interrogation footage with the investigators. I think it is helpful, very helpful. So nonverbal analysts work very well hand in hand with other people. It's hard to be able to get enough evidence that's reliable enough just based off of a nonverbal read. Because after all, nonverbal reads are going to be only 70 to 80% accurate on average. Obviously, there's the chance of hitting 100%, and then there's also the chance of hitting 0%. But on average, it's supposed to be around 70 to 80% accurate for a good nonverbal analyst. That's not perfect, so it does need more than that, and I think it does lend a little bit of weight during an interrogation to say that you're bringing in somebody who specializes in body language. Same sort of pressure as being like, yes, we're bringing in a polygraph test. It's that same sort of mindset of, okay, things just got real for a second here. That's pretty intense. So it does help. It can help with the interrogation, help it flow more beneficially. So instead of there being more stagnant time or asking repetitive questions and so on and so forth, being able to use a body language analyst, even in just name alone, to be able to add weight to the situation can help things move a little bit more smoothly. Great question, though. Ooh, I've got another from Jasmine Castillo. Thank you for the donation. I really appreciate it. And can you do a read on a medium? I'm actually going to do an entire series on a medium, because on mediums and psychics, because it's a very fascinating thing to me, and not a lot of actual study is done in it, and I would like to apply a little bit of the scientific method to it. And one of the ways of doing that is in immersion, trying to be able to learn through learning it, study it through learning it. So I have an entire series planned on that, and I was gonna do that. Hopefully, I was hoping to do it last summer, but obviously that stopped happening, so alas. And then Blue Bun, oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you for that donation. That is huge. I really, really appreciate it, and I love I love the hippo, I'm assuming is what that is, popping out of the chest. That's the coolest thing. Thank you so much for that donation. I really appreciate it. If you have a question, I'll see if I can answer that one for sure. If it pops up, I will give it my just best shot to be able to answer that question. Thank you. Oh, right down here. Please keep up your amazing work. Love what you do. Sending good vibes your way. Well, thank you. That wasn't a question, but thank you. I really appreciate that so much. I really do appreciate that help. Let's see here. From Vanny down here, we have a, hold on. It scrolled a little bit. Have you watched Lie to Me? And if you did, how would you rate the quality of their research and how true it is to nonverbal study? I have watched it. Love the show. It's a great show. It has its areas of over-the-top flamboyance is a way that I would put it. It just makes it way more cool sounding than it really is, which, TV shows kind of have to do that. It would be very hard to watch a TV show that didn't have some creative freedom, you might say. So it does a good job, and it's based off of solid science, but it's really over the top in areas. They based the show Lie to Me off of real life researcher and Dr. Paul Ekman, and he did all of the things that they're really kind of mentioning in the show, especially centered around the life of Cal Lightman in the show. But they took areas of it and made it to where it sounded a lot more concrete than it should be. And that's one of the things that kind of misled people when that show was out. Don't get me wrong. It's a really good show. I really do suggest you watch it if you haven't, especially if you're interested in this channel. But you have to keep in mind that when the rubber really hits the road, there's more nuance than what they're showing, and it takes a lot of time and effort to be able to establish some of these reads that they're saying can just be done on an instant. Don't get me wrong. You could still get those done on an instant to an extent, but it's just less glamorous than the show itself. But good science, and a lot of it just maybe pushed a little bit further than it should be. I hope that makes sense. Great question, though. Let us see here. Scrolling down to the bottom. From Akai, how do you read autistic people? Same way that I would read anybody. Establish a baseline and watch for positive and negative spikes. It happens with everybody. It's just personal. Like, you have to find their baseline and their positive and negative spikes. And it's obviously just a little bit different because they display differently. Not a big deal. It's just the way it goes. And everybody's different on all different levels. So not too different. Not too different in being different. From Ethan Lamar, question, why did you choose the people you did for the background they seem rather diverse. That's a great question, and that's part of it. I wanted to, on my background, have enough faces from enough of different cultures, facial structures, backgrounds, histories, points in time, so on and so forth, displaying expressions that I found to be notable or commonly seen, or they're known for it, or something along those lines. It was just like a little personal study that I ended up doing, and I appreciated. I was doing it on my own time, and then I was like, you know what, it would be cool on a background if I put these up, because I initially did these all on paper. I found these pictures, and I did it as just a personal study for me to be able to make sure I'm keeping sharp. And I had it as a background ages ago. That was the actual pictures that I had written on, and I had just like taped them and glued them up to a felt piece of cloth, and it looked cool, but it was so janky. They were always falling down. I could never get it to stay up. It was just a catastrophe all the time, but I loved the way it looked in a video. So then I was like, you know what? I'm going to do a digital version of it. I'm going to go through and redo all of this again. I'm going to do a digital version that can be printed off as a poster, as a tapestry wall background thing, as a blanket, whatever. And so I went ahead and made that, and that's where that came from. And some of it is like actually from influences in my life. Like for instance, see if you can see it. But yeah, this here in the middle is Paul Ekman, Dr. Paul Ekman, the pioneer of facial decoding. And then you could also see down underneath him, this guy down here, that's Darren Brown. He's a brilliant mentalist and a great showman, and he has some good psychological illusion techniques that I appreciate, just the thought process that goes into it, because there's a lot of psychology that goes into mentalism. Like for instance, this guy here, this is Alan Pease. He is another nonverbal researcher, and he has helped police work and businesses, and he's written books, one of which is called The Definitive Book of Body Language, and I definitely suggest you read it. Up here is Joe Navarro. Once again, same sort of deal. He worked with the FBI, and he has written books as well. Great books to be able to read also if you're interested in that. And then obviously there's like Patrick Jane, who is the mentalist, and once again, he's just fun. It was just a great show and like a creative inspiration for me. So I have him up there. And then up here, there's Robert Downey Jr., who also played Sherlock briefly, though his portrayal was interesting. I think it was good in some areas, not as great in other areas, but all in all, I appreciated it. And then you can't see it because it's hard to see, but right here, this is Benedict Cumberbatch. And obviously, he was just the Sherlock guy, so I went ahead and threw him on there. And then there's also notable people from all throughout history as well. So great question, though. Love that. And if you do want that, if you're watching this, if you do want that background, you can get it off of one of the merch links that I have in the description of my video. There's 2 different ones, and they are to 2 different merch shops because each one kind of has their own set of clothes and items that you can do. So if you want that, you can get it as a poster, you can get it as a blanket, a pillow. I think you can even get like a little carrying case or a tapestry. I think is what that's called, a wall tapestry. Ooh, sounds fancy, but yeah. So great question. And then now down here from TET, how do you train your intuition? That is an interesting question. Intuition is important and vastly misunderstood, in my opinion, and something that I'm trying to do a lot of study in. And this actually goes really, it walks hand in hand with the psychic and the psychic study that I'm trying to carry out as well. From my understanding of intuition, which if this model of intuition is correct, it is a trainable thing. Intuition is based off of something called thin slicing. Your brain takes in massive amounts of information every second. You're only conscious of a very small portion of that information. So when you get a gut feeling, what these researchers and this group of scientists kind of buy into is that in the idea of thin slicing, you're taking a small little blip of conscious information and combining it with a lot of subconscious information to be able to get a gut feeling that something is a certain way. I know this is confusing, but if this model is correct, that implies that as you learn more, gain more, and get more experience in certain areas with practice and so on and so forth, your intuition will become more knowledgeable. So just because you've seen and taken in all of this information, it doesn't mean that you know what that information is. You just know that it's there. on some level, be it sometimes on your subconscious level. So if you consciously can study all of this stuff that you're interested in, eventually your gut feeling, your brain, which is taking in all of this information, will be able to take it in and make the accurate conclusions that you would like it to make more quickly and subconsciously. That's how you train your intuition. You have to just put in conscious effort to do it, and then be able to be willing to follow your intuition. That's a whole other issue. In science, intuition is not encouraged because it's really a wishy-washy thing, and that's why a lot of researchers have refused to really put their name on that research, because if it goes poorly, then that's on their name. They have an image to hold up. So in science, it really relies on evidence to conclusion, and you have to have a clear pathway for it. In intuition, it's almost like that happens, but you don't get to see that clear pathway for it, at least not initially. So it seems like it's like you feel a way and you decide a thing, or you see a thing and you feel a way, and there's not really this connecting material in between that you would like to see in a scientific method. And so it gets really hairy to be able to do reliable scientific research on it, because it's just so hard to pin down. It also starts having to play with things that are still pretty just not understood in today's era, like how the mind actually works. Is it signals? What is the mind? How does that actually function? And it gets into this hairy area that is just difficult to really apply the scientific method to. So I suppose the short answer to your question is to train your conscious mind enough that it bleeds over into your subconscious mind, into your intuition. I hope that makes sense. Great question, though. Really good question. All right. This is from Sausage Documentaries. How can you detect manipulation happening in a relationship? Whenever you feel that you're constantly in the wrong and there's never any other way about it, chances are manipulation is happening on some level. Also, if the other person is never ever willing to hear that they might be wrong or to hear your side of the deal, that's also manipulation on emotional and mental levels as well. Anytime that you feel like it's not a balanced sort of situation and you just have to only listen to what they're saying or how they're feeling, and that kind of tailors how your life is, that's also manipulation. If you find yourself always doing things for them and them never doing anything back to you, for you, it's also manipulation. It's just riddled with it. Now, non-verbally speaking, manipulation isn't really a non-verbal tactic so much as it's a psychological tactic. And this can be done non-verbally, like portraying yourself as being overly hurt or very angry or perfectly innocent. Like that can be part of the manipulation. But when manipulation really boils down to it, it's a psychological game. And anytime that you just feel that you are not balanced with the person you're with, then there's the high chance that there's manipulation happening on some level. I don't know if that answered your question, but that's the answer that I have for it. Good question, though. From Purple Glitter. Hi, Observe. Hello. Love your channel. I was wondering if we had a personal video to be read, would you be interested? It's a video of a friend's last words. Yes and no. I don't do personal ones like that very often just because I don't want to get involved in a situation that can end up hurting more people when I don't have all the facts. And it can get really messy morally to be able to step into somebody else's arguments or just life in general and be like, hey, this is this kind of thing, and this is that, and they're lying here and they're not lying here. And it can make it to where it just gets really messy and it can hurt people. And I've been a part of situations where people have been hurt. Thankfully, it never has been pointed at me because I have always been pretty careful about it. But I usually steer pretty clear of getting involved in people's personal lives that way. There's a lot of legalities that go into nonverbal reads for like actual consulting like that. And it gets too messy oftentimes as well for people who are just personally wanting to be like, hey, one of the ones that I get asked a lot is like, can you tell if my significant other is cheating? And I just don't want to get involved. I don't want to involve the legalities of it. I don't want to get sued if somebody gets upset that I call them out on something and a relationship falls apart. And it just can be really messy. So I probably won't. But it is a good question, and I do understand that it would be nice to be able to have that sort of input down the road as Observe continues to grow and the brand Observe continues to flourish out into a company. Eventually, I do hope to be able to establish an actual brick and mortar consulting firm where more people can come on board who are approved and who can show that they know their stuff as well. And that might be a facet of that company is interpersonal relationships and consulting in those areas. But as of right now, I just don't do it too much. I'm sorry, but I hope you do understand. Good question, though. All right, on down here. Let's see here. Kylie C, did you plan for YouTube to be your main source of income, assuming it is with the amount of content you're putting out? Yes and no. Here's the story with Nonverbal Analysis. It's difficult to really have a full-time career as a nonverbal analyst outside of just mainly consulting. And it happens to be a freelance sort of market from my understanding of it. I'm sure that some of the big names, like for instance, Joe Navarro or Paul Ekman or Alan Pease, all these people, they have their own firms. And then it turns into that sort of business. When it's a smaller deal, like how I'm a little bit smaller and I just not as well known as those people, then it turns into a freelance gig per gig sort of deal. I'll go and help consult for a certain business or a certain firm or something like that. And it's hit and miss in the market. Some people don't have interest in it, and COVID has been weird. COVID has been really weird with this because it's turned into less of the face-to-face sort of deal and more of people being like, how do I present well on Zoom kind of thing? Just weird questions that you would not usually have, but they have to be tailored. So in relation to YouTube, I have been doing this YouTube channel, Observe, for almost 7 years. And back when I started it, it was a way for me to be able to show what I'm learning, how I'm learning it, to show the growth that's happened, to show how fun it can be, because that's a big deal, is that a lot of people just don't understand how fun nonverbal communication can really be. And as time went on, I started to look at it as a possible means of income, but not to a huge degree. And then this year really hit, and I have to say that I've been enjoying it. I actually really do love it. I love looking into all the cases. I love the variety of everything. It's been an excellent time all the way around. So did I fully intend on it happening? Not really. Am I upset that it's happening? Not at all. I hope that answered your question. Good one too, by the way. Let's get down here. From Solomon's Choice, did you use your reading of nonverbal communication when you first met the in-laws? Of course, 100%, absolutely. Getting a read on people that you're going to be close to and understanding who they are and how they interact and their feelings toward you is extremely important. And so, yes, I did use a fair bit of that during the first bits of me meeting my in-laws, and I think it was pretty beneficial. Obviously, it turned out pretty okay. We're still married, and it's happily so. So I hope that answers your question. Let's go on down here from Alyssa Gonzalez. Would you consider doing a text analysis, like written notes used for evidence, alongside nonverbal analysis on your channel? I have considered it. However, since the text analysis that you're speaking of, it is its own area of study, and I haven't done enough in that to be able to really confidently use it. So if I use it, it will be to a watered down degree, and I want to give disclaimers about that area of it. There is also the possibility that I would like to get some people that are proficient in statement analysis like that to be able to come onto the channel and talk about some of the stuff as well. Honest to goodness, I have been wanting to get people, like professionals in different areas, onto this channel to be able to interview them and talk to them and perhaps like join with them on cases and so on and so forth for a while. It's just been very, very difficult, either one, because of my own limitations, or two, now because of the obvious crisis at hand. So yes, to an extent. Good question though. All right, from Cali Mango. Hey, slightly off topic, but what are your tattoos? They look so interesting. Good question. So I've got a few different ones. I talked about this one a little bit. It's a film canister and film roll. Goes around my wrist and has some important things like coffee and Montana and YouTube and the date that I was married. And it's a film thing because I do video stuff, and that's the closest that you can get to that. Over here, I have some pine trees, and the background is the Starry Night painting from Van Gogh. And that was a combination of me growing up in this northwestern area of the United States. And I love Van Gogh's art and I love his story. So I decided to combine that. Up here has a phrase in Latin, down here has a phrase, and then here has a phrase. And it's just random words throughout various studies and things like that. They're not too incredible. And then up here, there's another little strip that has a phrase as well. I have a lot of words. My tattoo artist was eventually like, hey, why don't you find something new to do other than words today? And I was like, fair. Let's do a Van Gogh piece. So he was like, oh, oh no. So good question though. Thank you. Jita Baskaran. Sorry if I butchered your last name. Sorry for kind of spamming. No worries. I'm not upset. And if anybody else is in the comments is upset, don't bother. It's not a big deal. They can deal. Let's see here. But hi. What do you think about using certain muscles in the face to show emotions? Like the chin, I have heard shows grief. Is there a chart and for that, and is it accurate? There is some portions of that is accurate, 100%. If you're looking for that sort of research, I'm working on compiling my own, but in video form so that you could see it happening rather than just having pictures of it. If you would like that sort of information, I would check with Paul Ekman's site. I think it's the Ekman Group. They have excellent resources on that. I am afraid that you do have to pay for it, but I'm not sure how much that is. So that would be my suggestion on that front. But it does exist, and there's an entire coding system that you can go off of. Also, Chase Hughes from the Behavior Panel, he uses a system that kind of works like a nonverbal table of elements that's similar to that as well. And I wouldn't say so much that there are muscles that are only attributed to certain emotions, but I would say that there are muscle movements that are attributed to certain emotions more often than others. I hope that makes sense. Really good question, though. I really did like that one. All right, from Cassie, thank you first for the donation. I really do appreciate it. It really, for those of you who are like, oh man, why would you bother with the super chats? It is helping me keep the lights on, quite literally. This is what I'm doing full time. I put everything else on hold besides my research to be able to do this because I love creating videos like this and I love interacting with you. And so when you like watch the channel or you see ads or anything like that, or you go to Patreon, those all are actually helping observe happen now. So when I say thank you, I genuinely mean thank you. It is every single penny counts. So thank you. Now back to this. Have you ever gotten discouraged on your journey of deduction / nonverbal analysis? Every single day. I'm not going to lie. There's not a single day that goes by that I'm not learning something new and being like, oh, how can I possibly learn all of this? There's always something new. There's always something new coming up in psychology alone. And psychology is just a small facet of nonverbal communication, but it's a really critical facet of that. And so as more stuff is coming out and I'm learning more things, and things that were taught before and had evidence before have been shown differently, and there's always times of discouraging moments, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't have to remind myself that, I put my time into this. I know what I'm talking about and I know what I'm studying, and it's just, yes, it's absolutely discouraging. Thank you for asking that question. And if you're feeling that, if you are trying to study this and either you're in it for a while or you're just starting on it, I can promise you, you'll get discouraged a lot. There's a massive amount of information, but just keep going. It is brilliant and it is hugely beneficial just to day-to-day life in general. So thank you for that question though, Cassie. Blue Bun again, thank you so much again for another donation. I really do appreciate it. Will you be giving your second channel any attention? If so, what direction are you planning on taking it? Ooh, not a lot of people know about the second channel, Blue Bun. Yeah, I think I will. But maybe only after I find an editor. And I'm going to be hopefully picking up an editor for my videos soon because editing takes a while. It takes a lot of time. And since I do 30 minute to an hour long videos a week, it's just exhausting. Not gonna lie, I just spend so much time. 90% of the time that I spend is just centered around study and then editing. The amount of time that's spent on recording a video, very short. It's almost abysmally short. It's just those two things. So after I free up some of the time from editing, because I'm not going to stop studying. I love that part. I'm getting tired of editing. Once I finish that or figure that part out, then I'm going to put more attention into that other channel. And I'm going to take it in the direction that I have it now, where I just kind of get to maybe show a little bit more personal life me, where if I feel like going out into nature for a bit and shoot a video of it and just get a creative docu-style video of that, or if I want to spend some time doing maybe even a behind the scenes of Observe itself, so you could see what goes into the setup, what goes into the study, how a life in the day of Observe more or less would look. Something like that is something that I'm considering as well. But I just use that channel as like a creative dumping ground for myself. I like to be creative, and that's an area that I really can just have complete freedom with. On here, I really focus on being as effectively educational and entertaining as I possibly can be while staying true to this content. That channel is just like, you know what? I feel like creating this today, so I'm gonna do that. And I like having that, and I think it's important to have that as well. But that's a great question. And yeah, thanks for asking that. From Emily Flood. Have you heard of Dr. Todd Grande, and would you ever consider doing a collab with him? Of course I've heard of Dr. Todd. I watch Dr. Todd often, and I'll reference him often as well for things like the psychological or verbal analysis of what I'm doing non-verbally, because it's just helpful to get a more rounded picture. And I appreciate what he says and how he presents himself. And someday down the road, if he's up for it, I would be down for it as well. Or if he's down for it, I would be down for it, instead of up and down. But yeah, he seems to be fun. I do enjoy his videos. I am jealous of his editing style, because he kind of gets to sit down like how I'm doing here and just kind of give an exposition, and there's not a lot of a visual element to it because there doesn't need to be, whereas mine's very visual, and that's what takes the time on my editing. So I would love to be able to do more videos like how his are, but they're just harder to pull off with my kind of content. But yeah, he's excellent. If you haven't checked it out, if you're watching this and you haven't checked out Todd Grande, go do it. You'll probably enjoy it. Let's see here oh man, they're moving so fast. From Fiona Marie Teresa. Is the show Lie to Me accurate and informational about microexpressions and information? I have answered this earlier, and so I'll give a shortened answer of this, and then if you would like to see the fuller answer, you can just rewatch it a little bit later. Yes, it is, and it's a little bit over the top because it has to be interesting and engaging to people, and oftentimes science is interesting, but there's the dry parts. So they just kind of cut out all the dry parts and make it seem like it's this action star kind of thing. So yes, it's great. And if you haven't watched it and you love this kind of stuff, go watch that show. It's based off of good science with a little bit of embellishment here and there. Great question. Okay, a whole pile of super chats just came in. So I'm going to get to all of these, and thank you so much in advance. From Tara Summers, nice to see you here again, and thank you so much. Have you considered doing an analysis on the parents from Sandy Hook that were actors, so people say they were lying? I haven't considered that yet. It's the first that it's been brought to my attention. If that's requested enough, I will probably end up getting around to it. It sounds like an interesting read to me. Just so you know, just because somebody's good at acting doesn't mean they're good at lying. It's different parts of your brain. But that's a great question. Jenna C, thank you so much for your donation. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing your time with us. I'm a Patreon. Thank you. I really appreciate that too. And I love your videos. Hope your holidays are great and stay safe. Thank you so much. I hope your holidays are great, and I am doing a very good job at staying safe because I rarely leave my house at all. I don't go grocery shopping. I had to go to the bank for the first time today in like months. So safe is the primary word for me. But thank you. I appreciate it, and I hope yours are too. And thank you again for the donation and for being a patron. I really do appreciate all of that. It's fantastic. Jennifer Diaz, thank you so much for your donation. I really do appreciate that. And if you do have any questions, I'll try to keep my eye out as the comments move by really fast. And if you have one, I'll make sure to answer it. But thank you for your donation. Kylie C, thank you for yours. And do you think AI could do a cold read in the future? Great question. Love this idea. And it's something that I've been thinking about. The facial mapping capabilities and learning in AI could potentially revolutionize what nonverbal reading is capable of. I think that it could. However, not for a bit, because there's a lot of nuance to the human face. So being able to not only see it, map it out, and catch it, but then accurately interpret it kind of implies that it can also be fully and easily replicated. And right now, AI can't seamlessly replicate a moving, flawless human face. I think it can eventually, and I think it will change the name of the game, and I'm looking forward to that, but not yet. Great question, though. I love that question. It's cool to think about. From Cassie, again, thank you so much for the donation. I really appreciate it. And I love the little cute, I don't know what that little creature is. It kind of reminds me of a corgi sort of thing, and I love corgis. Corgis are the cutest dogs, but they shed like no other, and any animal that sheds a lot, I end up getting allergic to. All right. Scrolling on down to the bottom, let's see here from Strong Enough to Break. Where do you recommend to start when you're trying to learn the trade properly? I have a bachelor's in criminology. That's good. That's actually a really good base. And found this portion so interesting. I have Ekman's books, and it's helped my life a lot. That is a fantastic, fantastic question. And it does bring up an issue with trying to study this entire field. In the collegiate system right now, it's kind of sorely lacking. Even if you're going into a field that is closely related, like criminology or psychology, these segments that they have on nonverbal communication are small. It's a few classes, maybe a course, but not enough. There's just not enough. So if you would like to be able to really widen your base and establish a good foundation, it's done obviously, as you're finding out, through your own personal study. You have to do your own personal study. You have to take in your college courses because they're good as well, but they're very watered down. To be very frank, the college courses, they're just watered down because nobody talks about it. But if you go to the Emotional Intelligence Academy, either online or in person, that's where you're going to get some of the best training for it, because it's some of the only training for it. I'm working on establishing my own courses based off of and maybe partnering with the Ekman group, but it's just hard to find these courses out there. So what I had to do was I relied some on college stuff, and I relied on seminars, I relied on books, I relied on documentaries, I relied on scientific papers, which are the most boring things on the face of the planet, but reliable, scientific journals as well, and trying to compile all of that together along with some online testing that you can do through like the Ekman group and the Emotional Intelligence Academy. All of these kind of come together to give a good idea as to what nonverbal communication is, but it's so hard to be able to just find a degree in it because it doesn't really exist outside of the Emotional Intelligence Academy, which is a fully accredited college. So if you're interested in that, you can go to that. That would be my suggestion. It's just extremely difficult to pin down. So great question though. Scrolling down again, Nancy Montgomery says, sometimes I get restless leg syndrome while seated. Could my fidgeting be misinterpreted? No. Yes, it could. It could be misinterpreted if somebody didn't take the time to establish a good baseline or understand who they're working with, which is a part of establishing a good baseline. So if I were watching, if say I had to analyze you, I don't think I'll ever have to because it's just probably not ever going to be a need. But if I did, I would spend enough time either poring over footage of you or interacting with you face to face to be able to see over a long enough period of time, couple hours, something like that, to see how you interact. And then at that point, that would allow me to establish a decent enough baseline to be able to go from there. So during that time, I understand the restless leg thing. Even now, it's hard to see, but my feet they're moving. It's just part of a thing. That's just part of my baseline. I fidget. That's totally okay. An unexperienced reader will look at that and be like, they're guaranteed to be nervous. They're guaranteed to be maybe even hiding something. That's the worst, is when an analyst is like, that's a lie right there, when they don't have enough evidence. It's just the worst. So assuming that enough time was given for a baseline to be established, you would be okay. I wouldn't stress it too much. But if there wasn't, I could see that it could be misinterpreted by somebody. So good question, though. Really good question. All right, down here at the bottom from Ethan Lamar. I also want to know this, so I'll ask as well. Have you ever met someone you couldn't analyze at all? Not at all. I can usually get a decent feel of people in general, on some level, but there are definitely people who are more in control of their nonverbal communication for various psychological and physical reasons, and they're just a little bit harder to read, a little bit more of a blank page kind of thing, rather than having all of their emotions on their sleeve. So yes and no, but on some level, I can usually get a decent read on just about anyone. Good question, though. All right. Let's see here. From Sarah Dunn. How can you tell if you're being manipulated by a parent? Do parents do things differently than other relationships? How would someone try to counter this behavior? Manipulation it takes various forms, obviously, and unfortunately there are manipulative relationships everywhere. And yes, they obviously look a little bit different. A relationship with a spouse is different from a relationship to a mom or a dad. But the manipulation itself can still exist. I brought up the bit about manipulation earlier, is that it's not so much a nonverbal thing as it is a psychological thing. So you have to pay attention to the patterning that you see. I might do a whole video on just manipulation. Speaking of which, real quick, while I'm on this, something that I've been considering is bringing back in my educational expository style videos, to where I sit down and I bring up a topic and then I just talk about that topic. And it would be almost similar to like the entertaining Vsauce style videos that some people actually know me for from earlier on, before the body language stuff really became a sole focus. So that might be something that I'll do, is do a video on manipulation, the psychological signs of it, and then the occasional nonverbal signs of it as well. That's a good question. And if you would like to be able to kind of know more about it, just refer back to the earlier part of this stream. It was in the earlier half of the stream. So if you would like to see that answer, then I'd suggest you do that. Long story short, non-verbally though, there's not as much evidence as you would like to think there is. It's really more of a psychological game. But good question though. Down here, all right. I'll just do this one because I think I've seen this pop up a few times here. It's not quite in order, but from Pure Bliss, the only way to get true happiness is to be born again. Jesus loves you, so on and so forth. I appreciate you posting the message. And if that's something that you find happiness in, then have at it. As long as it doesn't hurt anyone else or it's not oppressing anyone else, go ahead and do your own thing. Let's see here. From Fiona Marie Teresa, I would love if you would make courses. I have been looking into where to take them myself. So that's an interesting idea, the course thing. And like I said, I have been heavily considering it. And one place that I was considering making an actual full course for everybody to be able to just go and do is on Skillshare. I don't know if I have the time to do that right now, especially once again, because I spend so many hours just editing videos. But down the way, that would be a place that I could probably do that. That would be most accessible to everyone and just easier to search, because right now I have a website that I haven't put live yet because I'm adding some more record or some archives on there. I want to have some nonverbal archives on there that people can go on and see the expression and see what they mean and so on and so forth. And I'm working on developing that. But even still, that website would be hard to find compared to Skillshare and searching on there. So I might be doing something like that on Skillshare. We'll see. Good idea, though. Let's see here. From Celia Seal, what is your opinion on other nonverbal analysts like Derek Van, I can't pronounce his last name, Scheik, I think, JCS Criminal Psychology, although JCS isn't just nonverbal. So I've watched some of Derek's. he has some points that are pretty darn good actually, but then other parts I feel like he's having to push the entertainment side of things a little bit more, and a lot of people aren't happy to hear that even with the best of the best, it's not going to be a concrete answer. And he offers oftentimes a much more concrete answer than actually exists. Same sort of ideas lie to me based off of good science, made more extravagant for the sake of entertainment. That's that opinion. I actually really appreciate JCS, criminal psychology. Them and I have been talking for a minute or so. There's a possibility in the future that we'll do a collaboration, which I think would just be the coolest thing, because they do a lot of time of just research into the stuff. So I have used their research often for some of my own stuff as well, just to help save me some time because I trust their research. So yeah, I do suggest that. There are a few other nonverbal analysts out there. I think it's important to watch as many different nonverbal analysts as you can, and then compare it to some of the bookwork that you can go to. So for instance, compare it to like up here, Telling Lies, that's by Paul Ekman, excellent book. Down here is What Everybody Is Saying by Joe Navarro, excellent book. Over here is Emotions Revealed by Paul Ekman, again, really excellent book again. So looking at that and then comparing it to the actual bookwork of the people that you know for sure, they've got their poop in a group, so to speak, then that can help you really decipher who you like to be able to go for. I always encourage people to go and test what I'd say, compare it, research it, do your own work. Never just take my word as gospel. Always be willing to ask the question why, and always be willing to do your own research as well. Because it's always, I just don't like the area. I don't like promoting the idea of following somebody blindly. I just can't do it. So if you see something of mine and you're like, that seems cool, but you seem suspicious, dig at it, go at it. I am happy to be able to take that sort of criticism. I'm always learning new things, so I'm always happy to be able to hear if I've got something wrong as well. But yeah, hope that answers. Okay, I have from Blue Bun again. Hey, now you're not going to have any money left. Thank you again for the donation. I appreciate it. One more donation on behalf of my husband. Thank you. Thank you to your husband. I really appreciate that. He asks, does your own bias affect your nonverbal reads, and has this been an issue in some cases? So that's one of the things that I have to consciously and continuously throughout a read ignore. And it's hard. And obviously, since I'm human, it's not like totally possible. I always have on some level some bias, but I'm aware of my biases and I try to counteract them as best as I possibly can. During this case with Amanda Knox is one of the issues, or one of the things that I'm focusing on most, because for me personally, I don't think that I like the person Amanda Knox too much, but I can't allow that to interfere with my accurate reading of her. So since I'm aware that I don't really have a high proclivity towards her, I can be aware of that and use that as a counteraction, use that awareness as a counteraction against that bias. So that's such an excellent question, and unfortunately one that not many nonverbal analysts talk about is their own personal biases. And so, yes, is the short answer to that question. Yes, I have biases. Yes, I'm aware of them. And yes, they can affect cases. And no, I try my hardest to not let them. I hope that answers your question. Thank you. Thank you again for the donation. All right. Down here all the way at the bottom again from Ashley Munoz, I think. Other people are asking this, and I'm also intrigued. Could you analyze the ACE family parents? I haven't heard of the ACE family parents. I think I've heard of the ACE family. I don't know why I've heard of that. Are they an internet family or what? Who is the ACE family? And maybe, especially if a lot of people are asking for it, if you see that come up on one of the polls, because I always post polls. A little story about Observe here. I love doing analyses of whoever. I just love doing nonverbal analysis in general. So I'll put out polls to see what people are most interested in seeing. So if you see that one pop up, then just vote for it. And if enough people vote for it, then I'll eventually get around to it 100%. But that's an interesting question. Down here. Oh, somebody said that they're just shitty family vloggers. So they are okay. Maybe I might. Sometimes I get frustrated with family vloggers. In my opinion, family vloggers have some questionable morals oftentimes, especially in the exploitation of kids for views. I think that's disgusting. So that would be a bias that I would have to really just buckle down on and ignore. So maybe. Down here. I'm sorry, I am terrible with names. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's Xuan. Is that Xuan or Xuan? I'm not sure. I'm so sorry. How does a body language barrier affect analysis when they are talking a second or third language? Ooh, that is such a fascinating question. This idea of body language and also language barriers. It really, whenever it comes into that sort of situation, I really do have to, once again, and I know I keep saying this and I'll continue to almost beat it like a dead horse, I really have to return to the baseline side of things. So establishing that baseline is still going to be the most reliable way for me to be able to see if there's a positive or a negative spike from that baseline. And then upon this kind of gathering these positive and negative spikes and what they're tied to information-wise, it does allow me to be able to still build a nonverbal character sketch as to who that person is themselves. But it can be interesting, especially when they're trying to work across languages, because if you're speaking something that's not your fluent tongue, part of your brain is always trying to be like, okay, I gotta use the right words on this, and it's not as automatic, and that displays non-verbally. Anytime that there's a psychological processing that's happening, it will spill out non-verbally on some level. Now, whether that's detectable or not is another question, but it does affect your non-verbal communication. So it can lend towards some areas of hastiness. So being your second language is really important. But that is an excellent question. Thank you for that. All right, down here at the bottom with is how you pronounce that. Have you ever been to court, and do you believe you have an advantage in deciding mystery? I have, and to an extent, yes, but only in the field that I'm familiar with. So with nonverbal communication, and it's interesting. I actually really appreciate court cases. I appreciate being in there, and consulting or not, it's always an interesting deal. And yes, I have some edge on just an average everyday person because I've spent over a decade of study on just this topic alone, where a lot of people, they don't. Either they didn't know to or they didn't care to. So I do have some edge, but I'm not like a superhero kind of courtroom person sort of thing. That doesn't really exist, unfortunately. It's still as admissible. A nonverbal analyst's analysis is as admissible as a polygraph is. It still has the potential for a flaw. So it's. Let's see here from Moonchild. Thank you so much for the donation. I recognize your username. I think you've been on one of these before. So let's see here again. Do you think doing envy analysis on influencers is affecting the way young fans see them? Like telling a kid Santa isn't real or teaching them early on? I'm sure it is. And as this kind of field becomes more popular, I'm certain that more and more people who are not as trained are going to show up on the internet trying to kind of buy onto the bandwagon, to not be manipulated by somebody pretending that they're a certain way and they're really not, and to just be able to look critically at everything presented to them as best as possible. Because I hate to see people who, especially young people, who they're following a creator because they really just think that it's cool or something like that. But they don't see that the person really isn't a great person in general, and maybe they're very deceitful or manipulative like that. And I hope to be able to use my content to help bring that awareness and provide more tools to people doing that. And so I think it will definitely change the way. And so I think it will definitely change the way that influencers act. But even if it changes the way they act, that doesn't make them better liars or better actors, because I can promise you that there are many, many, many influencers that are just perfect at both. So that's a really good question, and the implications of which are really important. Thank you for that question. All right. Petrish, something like that. Riva. Did you go to university? And if you did, Did you go to undergrad and grad, and what did you major in, and so on and so forth, all of that. Okay, so yes, I have gone to university, and I tailored my university to nonverbal reading, and that made it to where it was difficult to kind of maneuver. So I've been to 5 years of college, not including the stuff that I'm going through now, which right now I am pursuing my master's in behavior analysis and authenticity detection, I believe is what the technical term of it. Body language reading is just the easier way to say it. And I'm working through the Ekman group on that. It's just, I was so frustrated with the collegiate system on that front, just because of how watered down everything was in this body language area. If I say I had just wanted to be like a psychologist only, then there's a lot of stuff you can be. There's coursework, and there's an entire pathway through college to be a psychologist. But I wasn't just wanting to be a psychologist. I love psychology. I didn't want to be a psychologist. I wanted to be a nonverbal analyst. So I had to work on the master's for, honestly, just for the paper's sake, really. I am quite happy with my study and so on and so forth, but just for having the paper, a master's is just good to have under your belt, and it helps add. Jenna C says that the Wi-Fi is messing up and it's getting really mad. I'm sorry about that. I hope it's not me. I don't think it should be me, but it could be. Just so you know, I do have as fast as Wi-Fi in my city as hells of it. There's just nothing for a nonverbal analyst to work with. And psychopaths and sociopaths oftentimes can do that, this detachment of nonverbal and missing a lot of facial expressions. I was actually going to do a video on how to better communicate and how to understand communication during this time where all of us have half. So let's go ahead and see what these last 5 questions are. And it looks like I'm breaking up here. Nothing coming through. That's no good. That's no good. It shouldn't be. Shouldn't be. How many people are having troubles with the Wi-Fi? Just like, I don't know, put an angry emoji in the chat or something like that. For now, I'm going to go ahead and answer a few more questions from Gita or Jita or something like that. Looks like everybody's having trouble with the internet. Having trouble with internet issues. Let's see what's going on my end. It's saying that I'm connected and secured. I can go ahead and run a speed test though to see. Just a moment. Running the speed test. Some people are saying I'm back. Other people are saying I'm not. Everybody has left. Hey, that's the way it goes. And it's still testing my download and upload speed. Look at all that. I look like a cyborg right now. Man, your connection is unstable. Why? Why? Yeah, it's still saying that my internet is there. I hope that this actually works a little bit later. Down detector says YouTube has issues all day. Yeah, oh, this is sad. Speaking truths in and out. Still bad. They are having difficulty with connectivity, so it might be on YouTube's end, because my internet apparently is fine. So I apologize. I hope this actually records okay, and you might be able to see it happen later on. But let's see here. Audio is good. Video's messed up. Refreshing the page doesn't matter. You know what? I think this is just the universe telling me that it is indeed time to just wrap this up. I must have offended somebody in the YouTube God circle, so I am so sorry if I have offended some demigod in the YouTube circle. My bad. Please let my stream continue. But I'll answer this again because I don't think anybody heard it. But I have been analyzed before, but by me, nobody. yes, it is different, and I hope to be able to make it a little bit better, and I will be doing a full video on that eventually in the future, covering that topic. I'm sorry that you didn't hear the answer. Yeah, you know what? I think that this is I think that this is the end of the stream, guys. I'm so sorry that everything just collapsed here at the end. My apologies. I hope it cleans up, and I hope that it at least recorded okay. But you know what? I think I'll go ahead and just stick with that. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thanks for participating. Thank you for those of you who donated. It's very, very, very appreciated. And like I said, it's helping keeping the place running. And if you do want that wall of face, that apparently is all that I have for the day, regardless of whether or not I wanted to. My name is Logan. You have been oh so awesome, as you always are. And I will see you in the next video. Cheers, guys. I don't know.